host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Hunter of the Dead by Stephen Kozeniewski. And this is from Sinister Grin Press. And there it is. Anyway, Hunter of the Dead. So this is a world where there are vampires, 13 vampire houses to be precise, and there are uh, people who fight vampires. Our main characters are a vampire, one of the heads of one of the 13 houses. His name is Cicatrice, and he has a new apprentice, a new heir, Edie Hahn. And then on the human side, we have Carter Price. He's a vampire hunter, and he's sort of a rebel amongst the vampire hunters because there are those who are sort of trying to unionize, for lack of a better way to put it. There are a lot of these vampire hunters that think becoming a large cohesive unit is the best way to go. Carter Price thinks that's the wrong way to go, so he's sort of outside the group. He takes on a new apprentice, Nico Salazar. So we've got our characters on the vampire side, our characters on the human side, and in the middle we have the Hunter of the Dead, a legendary figure that kills vampires. But this figure of legend seems to have reappeared in the modern world and has not just started killing vampires, but killing humans as well. And so our vampires and our humans maybe need to team up to take out a bigger threat. That's the very basic nutshell of the story. There's so much more going on. Now, right off the bat, we've got a book about vampires, and anyone who's watched these videos should know by now that I'm not a huge fan of vampires. And we also have an author whom I've never heard of before. So I was a little leery about reading this. But, wow. I should have had no doubts whatsoever. This book is absolutely fantastic, fantastic fun. I like the characters. I like the 13 houses of vampires. I mean, it's something we've seen before, probably most prominently, at least as far as I think, in the whole Kindred, the White Wolf vampire universe that White Wolf created with the Kindred. It was a TV show and the role-playing game, and there was a card game and all sorts of stuff. And they had the different houses that sort of all had their different aspects to them. So that's something that's not 100% original, but it was well done. And we don't actually see a lot of the 13 houses. As I said, Cicatrice is our main vampire character. He and his apprentice Edie Hahn. So mainly what we're seeing is his house, but we do get a few others, and I'm going to get to one shortly, but I want to get to some other things first. But so we know that there are 13 houses. We get a lot of history on the important houses in Cicatrice. There's a lot of flashbacks in here. In the first maybe half of the book, every time we have a vampire chapter, it starts with a flashback. Some of them are only a day ago or a couple days ago, and some go all the way back to the Dark Ages. So we get a lot of stuff there, and it's all pretty interesting. Then on the human side, again, we have Carter Price is not a wonderful human being, but he is a very interesting character. He drinks too much, definitely. When we meet him, he's working in the deli at a sort of convenience store, gas station kind of place, a pump and go kind of place. And Nico Salazar is his manager. But some stuff happens, and Nico finds out that there's more to the world than just working the night shift at the pump and go, or whatever it's called, the gas station, and sleeping and partying and playing video games. There's a much darker side. And then the Hunter of the Dead. Is it really the legendary Hunter of the Dead? Is it somebody trying to make those in the know think that the Hunter of the Dead has returned. Um, don't know for sure. And there's a lot of vampire politics going on. There's some politics going on with the humans, all sorts of stuff. And it's all, none of it gets dry. It's not like, if you want to talk bad political crap, think Star Wars prequels. Ugh, nothing like that. This is all pretty interesting. Oh, one of the other vampires I absolutely love, Father Otto. Just a very a very interesting character in that he's this old, horribly vicious vampire with a very playful side. He comes off as sort of this, hey, we're having fun, let's joke around and do crazy things, and he can turn on a dime and rip out your throat. Absolutely loved that character. Um, so, for someone who's not a big fan of vampires, I really like the vampires in this. And now we're going to get back to that other thing that I hinted at before. One of the houses, they are called the Teslans, and we meet one of their members, and this is a vampire with a lab coat and goggles and a mechanical hand. And I really want more. I want a book focusing on the Teslans. I'm just intrigued by this, by these scientific vampires. Um, Almost, I don't want to say steampunk because I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. And this is the modern world, so steampunk doesn't necessarily fit in ish. I don't know, but we just get a glimpse of the Teslans, and I want so much more. I'm just so fascinated by the concept of these uh, mechanical, scientific um, contraption making and using, I suppose, vampires. And I think Cicatrice calls the one Teslan that we do meet calls her a junker. Um, so really, I like the vampires in this, and these vampires are crazy strong. Um, I don't think I'm giving anything away here when I say like a newbie vampire has to drink blood, and they don't have fangs; they'll rip you open and drink the blood. But a more experienced vampire can just basically absorb the life essence from a person. They don't need to drink blood. They don't need to get sloppy. They can just suck your life essence out. Suck. I'm not literally sucking. They can pull it out of you. Um, and these guys heal so quickly. I think, if I remember correctly, someone gets cut in half. A vampire gets cut in half and drags their top half over to their bottom half and aligns themselves, and boom, they heal up. It takes a lot to kill these vampires. And there are battles that are just horrendously violent and bloody, and it's great. Um, because they can take so much damage and they are so strong. It's some of these scenes are a bloodbath. Uh, so you might be asking yourself, well, what can puny little humans do against the vampires? Well, they have their weapons, and they know the vampires' very few weaknesses, and there's a lot of humans around. And so, and again, that's why certain people in this group of vampire hunters want to organize and become a larger group. And but of course, that also leads to the possibility that the vampires could just take out a whole ton of them all at once if they're together. So it's a give and take. Carter Price thinks that's not a good price to pay. All right. I don't know what was going on with that sentence, but um, so yeah, I think you can tell I'm very enthused by this book. I enjoyed it very much. Um, and one of the things I find interesting about the way it's written is that we will have these big, huge action scenes, and then there are times when we just get reports of the action, which I think actually balances things out. Instead of showing us everything, um, you'll have the interested parties or the involved parties preparing for something, and then we jump to after that something has happened. So it's not just a bloody violent action scene followed by bloody violent action scene followed by bloody violent action scene. Um, you get some breaks, and we do get to see some of it, but we don't need to see all of it. We can find out about the aftermath. There are lots of twists and turns. There's, as I said, there's a lot of political shenanigans going on amongst the vampires and humans. So you don't know necessarily who is really doing what, who's being honest, who's trying to play the sides against each other. And when Carter Price and Nico team up with Cicatrice and Edie Hahn, you don't know who. They certainly absolutely do not trust each other. Um, so you never know if one is going to betray the other, how things are going to go. Uh, it's just crazy. And this is all because this mysterious, legendary, possibly fictional character, the Hunter of the Dead, seems to have reappeared. And it all takes place, except for some of the flashbacks and things. It's all in Las Vegas, which is really interesting. Cicatrice figured that was a good place to set up shop. And basically, he's the guy that created Vegas behind the scenes. So I don't know of a lot of vampire stories that take place in Vegas, but then again, I'm not a huge vampire fan, so I don't read a lot of vampire stories. Maybe there are plenty that take place there, but I thought that was an interesting kind of, the city that never sleeps. Kind of an interesting place for the vampires, or at least this one house of the vampires, to have set up shop. So all of that being said, obviously, again, I really enjoyed this. I like the backstory that we get for the vampires. I like the characters a lot. Cicatrice, kind of a cranky old man vampire. Otto, so much fun. And some of the weird things that we see the vampires do, some of the rituals and the way they do things, really entertaining. Edie Hahn as the apprentice slash heir to Cicatrice's throne, is a really interesting character, and we see her go from human to what she becomes, to vampire and beyond. Not really beyond; she's just a vampire. The humans, the hunters, are pretty interesting. Again, Carter Price I like. Nico is sort of our doorway into it. He's the guy that thinks he's just living in the normal world, and finds out that there's much, much more going on. And again, the Teslans, I really want something more with the Teslans. So interesting to me. So all of that being said, my rating, I'm giving this 5 out of 5. Symbols of Cicatrice. This is my interpretation of the symbol of Cicatrice. It's described a few times. When anybody in House Cicatrice turns someone into a vampire, they carve this into them, essentially. So just taking one of the basic descriptions, that's what. But anyway, 5 out of 5. That's the main point. 5 out of 5. It's not the deepest, most philosophical book, but it is so much fun. It's so bloody and violent, and Kozeniewski definitely goes to places, I think, that a lot of authors wouldn't necessarily go. I was surprised by some of the things he was willing to have the characters do, some of the things that happen, because I read a lot of hardcore horror, and when I'm reading that, anything goes. So I'm not surprised by that. But something like this that I wouldn't describe as hardcore horror, as violent and gory as it is. There's a certain something to hardcore horror that sort of sets it on its own little in its own little place, and I don't think this fits into that. Um, and so the fact that he did certain things did surprise me. Um, and I'm not saying it's bad because it's not hardcore horror. Obviously, I gave it 5 out of 5. I was impressed with the writing. I was impressed with the characters. I'm impressed with these vampires. I'm interested in them. I wouldn't mind seeing more of the other 13 houses and Teslans, more Teslans. Um, so yeah, if you want to just have a blast reading something over the top, crazy, but well written with fascinating characters, and yet bloody, crazy action. Pick this up. 5 out of 5. Signs of Cicatrice. Uh, Absolutely, highly recommended for horror fans. If you want to see another, not a completely original take on vampires, but not derivative either. Again, there's new stuff mixed in with the old. That's what you got to do nowadays. Uh, Pick it up. Just pick up Hunter of the Dead, Stephen Kozeniewski, Sinister Grin Press. As always, I'll have links for the book in the description below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We like to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Um, and please like, share, and subscribe. I believe that covers everything. So this has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.